My name is Jamie Aaron, and today I'm going to talk to you about transcribing. One of the most common questions I get from my students is how to make the most of transcribing. Something that we all come across is transcribing a solo we like, learning those lines or phrases and getting the ability to play them, but then going to the jam session or the bandstand or the studio, and none of those lines come out. So how do you internalize those lines and get them from your favorite players and make them part of your own vocabulary and make them stick? So in this video, I'm going to show you how you can get the most out of transcribing to really internalize the vocabulary from your favorite players and make it your own. So why do we transcribe solos? We hear something we like, we want to be able to play that idea, so we learn it and transfer it onto our instrument. But one of the issues is getting that to come out in your playing. That's somebody else's artistic statement, and to come out, it needs to be part of your form of self-expression. So one of the challenges is just transcribing from the beginning. So the first thing I recommend, if there's a solo you like, and you like the entire solo, and you want to learn every note of the whole solo, great. But you don't need to learn the entire solo. Sure, that's a great exercise for ear training, but usually when I transcribe, I find just the little bits of the solo that I like. Now, in some cases, I like the entire solo, or I like the first two choruses of the solo. So I'll sit down and transcribe the entire thing. But if there's a solo where I just like one lick, one 8-bar phrase, or one 2-bar lick, or one 12-bar chorus of blues, then I'm going to concentrate my time on just learning that, because my goal is to take the vocabulary that I enjoy listening to and be able to soak it in so I can play it on the instrument. Learning to improvise is like learning a language, and I want to learn the words that are going to be most useful for me, the words I want to use. Just like in your vocabulary of speaking, there are words that you know, but you don't use them every day in your speaking because it's just not your type of thing. It's not the way you like to talk. You choose the words that you enjoy using. There are other words that you don't know that you might learn and work it into your vocabulary, and you might work that into conversation. So the same thing goes with transcribing. So you don't have to transcribe an entire solo. You can if you like the entire solo, but really just focus on what lines are the best sounding to you that you'd like to incorporate into your own personal playing. Step 2, listen to that solo as much as you can for a few days or even a week up until transcribing, to the point where you can sing that solo or sing those phrases perfectly, because if you can sing them, you can play them. That's the classic cliche that I'm sure every music teacher has told you already. If you can sing it, you can play it. And that's true. If you know how it sounds already in your head, and you already know the rhythms, and you have an idea of the contours of the notes, whether the notes go up or down, and you can sing that phrase, then you're just transferring it to your instrument. You've already internalized it in your head. So you're just transferring it now to the instrument, and so it can come out of the instrument. So the next step from there is to figure it out on your instrument. And that can involve using your ears, and I totally recommend slowing down recordings to help. If you're using YouTube, there's a feature down below where you can change the speed so you can make a recording half speed. There are also a bunch of great apps like Transcribe, so check those out. And it's okay to use those. I mean, back in the day, people would slow down records to figure out lines, so use that to your advantage. So what I usually do, if there's a fast phrase that I like, I'll go to half speed. So I'll set it at 50% and I'll figure it out there. And when I feel good playing it at 50%, I'll just increase it by about 5%. So maybe I'll go to 55%. Maybe 10%, maybe 60%. And then I figure it out and get the ability to play it perfectly then. And I really, if I'm learning a whole solo or a longer phrase, I'm just focusing on bit by bit. I'm not thinking about the entire solo. I'm just taking little bits and I will gradually add them until I get the whole solo. So when I'm focusing on one little phrase, I'm just going to do that 65%, 70%, 80%, and just inch my way up to the ultimate goal of playing it at 100% speed so I can play it along with the recording without having to slow it down. But there's no rush, and if you really want to internalize it and learn it, you got to start slow and bring it up from there. Okay, so now you've learned the line, you can play it along with the recording, but it never comes out in your playing. This is something that's happened to me a bunch. I've learned some kind of cool line, and I think, oh, this is great, I'm going to sound so good when I work this into my playing, and I'll come back after a gig and I'll think, wow, I didn't even use that idea once. And if I think about it consciously and try to use it, I might make a mistake, or it's just because it's not organic. It's not really coming from my vocabulary. If I'm thinking about it beforehand and thinking, I'm going to throw this lick in right now, it usually doesn't work out well. That's because I interrupted my organic flow of soloing in order to just kind of copy and paste a lick I learned in there, and that doesn't work. So what you really want to do is be able to internalize this lick and make it part of your vocabulary. And you might know it, but to really use it, you have to understand how it works. So to show you what I'm talking about, here's a really simple little Grant Green lick I transcribed once. Just a minor 2-5 lick over an E half diminished, an A7 altered, and a D minor 7. So let's say I learned that line, but it's just not coming out in my playing. It's not coming out on the gig. So I really want to get inside that line and figure it out. So I'm going to analyze it and figure out why it works. We'll start on the minor third of the 2 chord, the E half diminished. We get to the C sharp, which is the third of A7. So that takes me to the third. So I can see now, I'm understanding that I'm targeting that third of the A7. So when we land on that C sharp, I'm landing on the 5 chord. And then I hop up to this note. Well, that's the flat 9. So I know it's an altered 5 chord. So there's the third of A7, the flat 9, the root, the flat 7. And then I land on the minor third of the D minor 7 and into the root. So by understanding the scale degrees and how that works, I understand how the line is constructed, and I know how it makes sense with the changes. So then the next step is to try that line in different keys. G minor, C minor, E minor. So now I know I can play it in any key. I'm not just tied to that key, because the ultimate goal is to not make it that lick from that Grant Green solo, but instead it's that lick that is part of your vocabulary that you play when you feel like playing it, when it comes out naturally. So another thing we can do is play it in a different position on the guitar. We learned it here, but how about playing it in the same register but in a different position, like here at the 12th fret? Got a bit of a different sound because we're using lower strings. What about learning it an octave lower? So now I'm not tied to playing this in one register. What about playing it an octave up? What about changing that minor third to a major third, and now you have a major 2-5-1. All of a sudden, now you have a major lick, and you can do all that to the major lick. What about changing where the octave jump happens? So instead of jumping up for that flat 9, we go down. So now we've changed the contour of the line while keeping the same notes. So you do all that, you really can get inside the line to understand how it works, and you can use it in different situations and it'll work its way into your vocabulary. The other question I get, do I write it down or not? So my answer to that is, if you write it down, it makes it a lot easier to come back later. So a lot of licks and lines that I've learned, I just learned from YouTube videos or from Spotify, and I make a folder, I come back and I figure it out, or else it's just ingrained in my playing and I don't have to go back and look for it again. But I went through a really heavy phase of transcribing in college and grad school, and I made a notebook and I transcribed a bunch of solos in that book. Actually, let me get it for you. So here's my holy transcription book, and you can see there's a bunch of solos and things I've transcribed in pencil from back in the day. These are things that I've long forgotten, and if I didn't have that book, I might not even remember I transcribed them in the first place, and it's great to be able to just jump in and read them. So I recommend writing it down for that reason, and also because if you're writing it down, you're really analyzing, you're figuring out the notes, you're looking at how the notes relate to the chords that you're playing over, and you're figuring out the rhythms, so you're not just playing by ear, but you're really figuring out what those rhythms are, and it's a lot more of a calculated process. So I recommend writing it down, but definitely in the cases of certain lines and certain riffs and certain figures, if you just learn it by ear and just play it and throw it into your playing, that's fine too. So I decide, is this going to be something that's worth writing down for me, or can I just pick it up by ear? So another important thing about transcribing, for me, picking up vocabulary is a crucial part of being an improvising musician, right? All of what we play is vocabulary, just like when we speak. But a lot of the vocabulary that I've learned hasn't come from actually just sitting down and learning something by playing it off of a recording, but it really has just come from lots of listening. I listen to a lot of music, and a lot of that just soaks in, whether it's the feel or the groove or actual lines. There are a lot of things in my playing that I never actually sat down and wrote out, but I've just heard them so many times on classic recordings that they've worked their way into my playing through my ears, and it just kind of comes out. The thing to remember about improvising is it's not always everything that you play is completely made up on the spot. You're definitely going to play some stock lines and phrases that are part of your vocabulary or that are cliches of the music, whether it's jazz or blues or rock or country. But part of improvising is not knowing when exactly you're going to use those lines. I probably have, a whole bunch of phrases and lines and 2-5-1 licks that I use, and I probably use them multiple times every night that I play a gig. But the difference is I couldn't tell you ahead of time when or where I'm going to throw that line in or that phrase in. It just sort of comes out. And that's what you're working towards. So by doing a lot of listening, you're learning vocabulary the same way if you move to a foreign country, you would learn a lot of the language just by going out and walking down the street and reading signs and hearing people speak. So this is the same way that you're going to pick up vocabulary. So for transcribing, remember, do a lot of listening, be able to sing it first, take it phrase by phrase, learn it slowly, and then take the line and learn it in different keys, in different octaves. If it's a minor, make it major and vice versa. And really get that playing internalized, get that line internalized and ingrained in your playing so it comes out in your vocabulary. I hope this video is helpful. If you'd like more guitar lessons, gear demos, and performances, click subscribe, like this video. Let me know what you've been transcribing lately. Comment in the comments section below, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks a lot for watching.